Hello everybody and welcome to another teaching deck guide here at Playing Board Games. If this is your first time at the channel or watching one of these videos, consider liking and subscribing. We would love your support and it helps us go up on the YouTube algorithm, which means more ARKHAM content in your feed. This is the next episode of our teaching deck series where we are going to be looking at the Mystic class. I'm going to let Travis introduce what the goal of this series is. So Travis, why don't you take it away and what are we doing here today?
We're looking at presenting some decks for you guys to help teach newer players how to play and ensure that they have fun while they're playing. These decks each focus on teaching certain things about the game as a whole, but also focusing on what each class in particular does. Some things that I try to avoid are situations which can involve the new player feeling bad. For example, curse tokens. You won't find those in any of the decks. And things that might result in overloading the new player. So despite Ward of Protection 2 being a very strong card, you will not find it as part of this deck because it forces the new player to focus on a lot more things than they really need to in the Mythos phase. Yeah.
Sweet.
I think that was most of it.
Yeah. What are the key points of the Mystic class, Travis?
So, the most important thing is you do everything with your brain score. We're going to be getting clues, we're going to be dealing damage, we're going to be evading. All the things that other classes use, we're only using our brain for. Spells are very important because those are what allow us to do those things with our brain. And because of this, our arcane slots are going to be like the hand slots of other classes, where compared to the Guardian deck, where we use our hand slots to fight, the Seeker deck, where we use our hand slots to investigate, we're using our arcane slots to do all that stuff now. Mystic Investigators care about the symbols on the tokens. That's going to be something that comes up. As well as Encounter deck in Doom Interaction is another big part of the purple class. One other thing that is more general that we're going to be focusing on for this deck in particular is intercard synergies, which is a little bit more complex of a concept, but there are a lot of them for this deck in particular.
Yeah.
And I think it's good for new players to be able to, I might not give them this one like right off the start. I might encourage them to play one of the other classes first, especially since it can be kind of weird for a new player to it feels bad for them to not be able to contribute because they don't have a certain spell that they need. Which we do have cards to kind of hopefully avoid that a little bit, but this is a nice sort of slight step above the basics of the game where players can really start putting card interactions together and have those sort of aha moments.
Yeah, definitely. So let's hop into the investigator of choice for this deck, which is Agnes Baker. Why did you go with Agnes?
Well, I picked Agnes because she has 5 brains. This is a big plus. It was the first thing I was thinking about. The second reason I picked Agnes is in particular because of her ability, where after one more horror is placed on her, you get to deal damage to enemy at your location. This ability lends itself very easily to like combo and synergy realization and deck building. It also helps teach the new players that sometimes taking damage, sometimes a bad thing isn't always a bad thing, you know? Which is very, like, sometimes you have to accept bad things as part of the game. And Agnes does a good job of showcasing that, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I think that's the nicest part. I mean, apart from, like, the 5 brain. And when we get to the other investigators at the end of this that can work with this, you'll notice that I also chose all the investigators with 5 brain because it skips a big road, it's a little speed bump that all the other 4 brain mystics have. And one thing that also works really well with Agnes is what you're saying is, and I really like this choice because at a certain point, you're going to have to learn as a new player playing this game that horror isn't, like, taking horror to do a positive thing isn't a bad thing, right? And you can get these cool tricks with Agnes that I think makes her very fun. And this deck also has a lot of good pieces that we're going to get to that can help facilitate or protect her when this is happening. One thing as well with Agnes is that her weakness is very feel bad. However, they can potentially try to learn from this or play around it or get some sort of benefits for it. Like, for example, if they have their Heirloom of Hyperborea out, which is like kind of a clunky personal weakness, but it still can just like, they can turn that into a card and then they're like, okay, it wasn't all bad. But ultimately, they'll just have to know that like they'll learn that Dark Memory is tough and that you don't want to see it. And it's also probably why it teaches the Doom thing, but also probably why like something like Arcane Initiate is in here, because there will be nothing worse for a new player than spinning Arcane Initiate and grabbing Dark Memory because it's the only spell. It's happened to me. I've seen it happen to other people, and it sucks. And having that for a new player, they'll be like, "I'm never gonna play this card. It's the worst. It comes in with the Doom, and now it's making me draw my Dark Memory." So that's just something to be aware of, and like you'll have to like even like preface it, be like, this weakness hurts, and you're gonna just want to be aware of it.
Yeah, part of the reason I selected I didn't put the Arcane Initiate in the deck is like paying attention to the Doom play and stuff like that is a little bit too much for new players, I found.
Yeah. Definitely.
It feels bad for them to be like, I'm going to play my guy, and you're like, no, don't play that. That'll make us lose.
Yeah.
Don't
and
do that.
They'll be like, okay, my mind is like, never play this guy. He's going to make us lose.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I should pay attention to when Doom's about to advance. Yeah. It's more of an advanced concept. Yeah. So we have the spells, the damage spells. We have Azure, Flame, and Shriveling. This is how they attack with their brain. Showcases that they use their brain for things. In this case, it's fighting. In addition, it also shows that they need to pay attention to tokens, and that there's a little bit of balance because the card. They'll learn that the card is strong, but it has this downside to make up for that. And then also with Shriveling, they can start to find some of these neat synergies that exist with Agnes Baker that don't really exist in the previous decks we talked about here. I have Ineffable Truth here because it's kind of like it can deal damage. I put it in this slide for this one, but it also teaches use your brain. You can use it to evade. It also teaches that, like, still once again, the downsides of the token are there, but just this is the first like time where we're looking at evading as a concept in this series. And it's just that sometimes you want to, and also that Ineffable Truth has that nice bonus where it can also kill. So it's like if they don't have their Shriveling, but they have their Ineffable Truth, they can still contribute to the game, which goes well with what Travis was saying, that when you're playing a Mystic, if you don't draw the right spell, that can be a very bad time. And this makes it so that you have some more hits to get there.
Mm-hmm.
What about these ones, Travis?
These are our Clue Gang spells. We have 2 copies of each of them in here, as long with the fighting ones, because to help compensate for the fact that we don't have Arcane Initiate to help us find them. But we have Forbidden Knowledge is one of our economy choices. Economy is important for this deck because these spells all cost a lot of money, man.
They do.
Yeah, especially like realistically, your Mystic player is probably gonna be playing like 3-ish of them a game. You're gonna want like 1 clue, 1 fighting, and then like 1 other one, depending on the scenario. And that's like 12 resources. But yeah, this is in the core set. It's a nice synergy card for Agnes, where you can show them like, hey, yeah, you have to take a horde to get it, to get your extra money, but you get to also do a damage to something.
Yeah. And it's a nice thing because then they're like, oh, so I can do this. And then, sorry, I'm just going to go back to Agnes to go back to her card to showcase this. But this also kind of teaches a small thing too that we talked about in last week's video for the Harvey Walters deck, where this can teach players to pay attention to phases, because Agnes Baker is limit once per phase. And then they can like piece together, oh, if I do this in multiple different times, like for example with Forbidden Knowledge, you could do this in the enemy phase. And they might be able to pick up that they can use this to their advantage in cool ways. Holy Rosary is just you're gonna have it. It's in the core set. It's just a really good Mystic card. Gives +1 brain, and also gives them some soak, which is gonna be good because Agnes Baker, she likes taking horror, so this can make them feel like, oh, I have a little bit to put this on the Holy Rosary, and it makes them now have 6 brain, which is a good number. We have Peter Sylvester, gives +1 foot, which actually is not for nothing in Agnes, but that's not why he's really here. He's really here because once he's out, the player can feel a lot better about putting horror on Peter, because that means they basically get like their forbidden knowledge now deals a damage. You gain a resource, and then that horror that you took from it is going to be gone at the end of your turn. In addition, it also is a really good upgrade that we're going to get to when we get to the upgrade side. Then we have Perseverance. I like this inclusion because it allows them to a player to feel a little bit more safe. They can like understand that they're not going to die if that moment comes for it, and if they're in a good situation, they can commit it for a guts or 2 brain for a test. So it's like always active. It can be used defensively or offensively in this deck, which means that it's like always active.
Yes.
What about these ones, Travis?
Oh, I got emergency cash, 'cause again, we need a big pile of money. We got Uncaged the Soul, which again, we need a big pile of money.
Yeah.
Uncaged Soul is nice over the emergency cash because it also commits for those brain symbols later in the game. And we have Fearless, which on its own is not like the best card in the world, but it helps teach new players to care about skills in this deck, something we otherwise don't. And new players like healing.
Yeah, they do.
So, I mean, like, you're probably gonna need a little bit of healing in this Agnes deck, if we're being honest.
Yeah,
probably. It's a lot of damage.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. Just a little bit. Just a little bit. We have Ward of Protection. This one allows them to not the level 2, so they can just focus on themselves, which lets them just if they see an effect they don't like, they can say no on the Treachery card, and then they also can take a horror, which can potentially deal damage to an enemy at a location. So that's those small synergies that exist, while also allowing them to say no to something, which I don't have to imagine. I've done it. It feels really good. We have a Test of Will here as well. So this one, it can care about other investigators, and I think when like you're just starting out, you can like stress to them, hey, just you worry about you, I can handle myself. Unless like they'll notice it, you'd be like, I drew an Ancient Evils, and then they can feel like the hero, right? But obviously, I think this one still fits with that focus that Travis had, where you can just focus on yourself. But this is basically another Ward of Protection that is not a sure thing, but it probably is, because your Agnes is likely going to have 6 brain. And then there's Guts. Guts is good. It's both offensive and defensive of the deck, and it replaces itself after they use it.
Something else that the Test of Will does is it also helps reinforce that Mystics can kind of do anything with their brain.
Yeah.
Even though it's a Survivor card, like, you gotta have good brain to use it.
Yeah.
And you can kind of substitute a test that you otherwise wouldn't be good at with a brain test.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah.
Yeah.
All right, Substitutions. So there's only 2 here, and they're both actually like they're both preference. One of them is Crystal Pendulum instead of Holy Rosary. I know that there's a lot of people who like Crystal Pendulum, so like it could be an option if you want to give it to them. I think it's a little bit kind of complicated, and they'd rather just like take the tests. But it kind of fits a similar thing, and it also loses the horror. But this could be something you could do if you have found that the player you're playing with likes these little mini games, because it effectively just adds a little mini game to the game. So it's just something you could consider. I would personally always stick with Holy Rosary, but it's a substitution that could be. And then this one's pretty simple. A Test of Will into Deny Existence. Deny Existence feels good, and if you're worried about like the player having to pay attention to other people, or alternatively, if you just don't have this card, Deny Existence can fill that spot really well.
Yeah.
All right, upgrades. Travis. What about? Oh, again, no. Before I get into this, before I hand these to you, I'm going to talk about how we have formatted these upgrades here. So,
Yeah.
rather than giving the entire binder of cards or the entire slip box of cards that you have, you should pull these cards out in advance if you're going to be teaching a new player, and give them as a pool of cards to upgrade from, like the Investigator decks. This allows them to make better choices with a smaller pool, and you'd also kind of curate the pool for them, which means that like they're making good choices. Right? They're not. I'm not going to name names, but I was playing once, and they took out a card and added a level 0 Quantum Flux, or the whatever shuffles your discard back into your deck. And at that point, I was like, I think I'm doing something wrong. But I didn't want to say no. You just have to be like, I need to change my approach. So this allows them to not get overwhelmed and make decisions that are more sound to what the goal of the deck is. So Travis. These are easy. Why are these ones here?
Yeah, these are just better versions of the cards already in the deck.
Yep. Yep. That's actually honestly kind of the thing for the majority of the upgrades that we have here. But that's the Mystic class. Like, that's the Mystic class, especially when you want to keep it nice and simple. We can take a good moment to talk about Peter Sylvester, because when he upgrades, two big things happen. He gets one more horror soak on him, which is, it doesn't sound like a lot, but it is a big chunk. Because now, like Peter Sylvester, if he has no horror on him, he can soak your first draw of Dark Memory, which is kind of huge. And then another thing he does is he also now gives you Brain. He's very good at Agnes, and he's very strong. And then these are the last upgrades we have here, Travis. Why the Earthly Serenities?
Again, the new players really like healing. It shows that there's just something else you can do with your brain. And it's also like a really good card.
Yeah. Yeah. And they also can like feel like they're helping too. This is something we talk about a lot in these, because if a player feels like they probably don't understand why getting clues is helpful, right? They understand like it's what we have to do, but they don't get it. But if you get a player who can remove like 3 horror from you, they're going to be like, I'm a god. I'm the most helpful person in the world. They understand that, but not so much the game, I think, when you're just starting out.
Oh, sorry, one thing you will notice is that we didn't include any of the highest level version of the spells. And it's because new players will naturally gravitate towards those, and it just kind of feels bad when they draw like the crappy version of them compared to the other ones. I don't really think that. So like, I avoided putting in Down the Rabbit Hole because it is a pain to explain to new players why some of their cards cost extra experiences, some of them cost less.
Yeah.
And I avoid putting in Arcane Research because it feels bad for them to have that trauma.
Yeah.
Tell them they start with 2 brain damage every game, especially on Agnes. And then I don't think that those upgrades are really like feasible without Arcane Initiate to find them, and without the experience reduction to like actually afford them.
Yeah, and it just makes them just more consistent. Consistency is better than having like the big flashy thing when they draw the bad one. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Sick. All right. Other investigators. This one's pretty simple. Akachi and Jacqueline, they could stay pretty similar. Akachi is like, if someone really wants to play a mystic, Akachi is like a good, like, baby's first mystic. But it still works. She can still be really strong for someone who has played a few cards. But like, if someone really wants to start with a mystic, Agnes can be a little bit daunting, and Akachi's a little bit easier. But the most important thing about Akachi, Jacqueline, and Dexter is that they have 5 brain. Dexter is going to be like the more complicated one here, because he has like the rogue part of him, and it's different, so the deck will need to be changed. But it's still at the core. You can run the majority of the mystic stuff we have here, taking out a few like forbidden knowledge that don't work in these other ones. But they're all good mystics, mainly because they have 5 brain. And Jacqueline also has that thing where she can support, but I think just that the big thing is just they have 5 brain. So like, they don't need to work harder for their spells. They don't need to find a Shriveling and a Holy Rosary. They can just play the Shriveling and probably be fine. Yeah. Well, that's it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed it, please like and subscribe, or leave a comment down below if this has helped you potentially build a deck for yourself if you're a new player, or for someone that's just starting to play with you. We'll be back very soon with both the Rogue and the Survivor guides for this. And until then, have a great one. Thanks for watching, and as always, GG's.